morning. My name is Joan McSween, and we are at the Winter Garden Library. It is Monday, December the 11th. Sir, would you state your name?
Rod Reeves.
Good morning, Mr. Reeves. Could you tell us, please, how it is that you came to be in Winter Garden?
Well, my parents came here in the 20s. My dad from Alabama, my mother from Georgia, and married in 1938, and I was born in 1940, so I am a native, and grew up here and been here all my life. I attended Winter Garden Elementary School after, well, actually beginning, the war was not over when I started school, and I remember certain things about the war here. We had various encampments around West Orange County, and my mother and father rented a room to soldiers and their wives who were here for a short time, and then they would move on, then there'd be another couple come in. And I remember sadly going up to the troop train with my mother and a lady and her husband who rented from my parents to see him off on the train. I was very young, but I remember just a great feeling of sadness prevailed at that time. And our world was very small. I lived about 2 blocks from town, and I don't think you could have gone 6 blocks in any direction from the intersection downtown before you were out of town. You would have been in orange groves or vegetable gardening. So it was very small. We didn't realize it, and we was very happy. I think I was a block and a half from my dad's barber shop. My mother worked at the telephone company, and I think that was all of 2 blocks away. My elementary school was just around the corner. The corner drugstore was literally around the corner, and the movie theater about 3 blocks away, and that was our world. Activities centered greatly around schools here. If there were a play at the high school, I remember I was always so nervous we wouldn't get there in time to get a seat when I was a little boy, because, and the same with football games, anything that happened that was school related. And then I went on to Lakeview Junior Senior High School and marched in the band for 5 years. You'll notice I didn't say played in the band. I just held a trumpet and honked. I was never talented, but it was a wonderful time. And then I went away to college and came back and taught for 13 years at Lakeview, taught art and art history. And the excitement that young people felt about homecoming and building floats and competing with one another, and the same with the junior senior prom. The city auditorium was virtually changed into everything from a Polynesian village to an English Dickensian street. I mean, I had a friend from college who was stage manager at NBC in New York, and he always planned to fly home to see what the students had done with the auditorium. That they were that good at it. And then, of course, we saw a decline when the citrus froze, and it was never the same. And then the downtown, became almost a ghost town. It was so sad, in the 80s especially. The bank had moved, the drugstore had closed. At one time there were 3 drugstores, and then the last drugstore closed, and the big stationery store closed. It was a very sad time. And then the railroad was taken out and the trail put in, and I don't think any of us had a clue as to the effect that was going to have. It's wonderful to go downtown on a weeknight and not be able to find a parking place. I never complain. I'm so happy to see that. And then the restoration of the theater here, which really had to be recreated because it had been totally razed inside. There was no vestige left of anything. And I remember the first time I walked in after it had been restored, it was very emotional for me because that's where I'd going to see the cowboy movies on Saturdays. That was a big thing, and the serials that continued from week to week. That was our entertainment. Going to the movie was a big thing. I remember the Three Musketeers finally came. I'd see the ads in Life magazine, and then it seemed like an eternity before they ever came to Winter Garden. I'd come to Orlando, and I couldn't wait to see the Three Musketeers. And I had one of my chores was to dry the dishes. So I guess wash and dry after supper. So my dad said, now your aunt's coming by to pick you up, so get busy, get those dishes done, because now you're not going to leave until they're done. Well, I was sword fighting, with the dish towel and playing around and banging pot lids as cymbals. My dad said, you better hurry up. And I heard my aunt honk the horn, and I started out. My dad said, where do you think you're going? I said, we're going to the movie. He said, no. He said, you're going, but only after you finish here, and then you can walk or run up there. And I remember the movie had started when I got there. Boy, that taught me a lesson. I was very lucky to have wonderful parents. My dad was a town barber. My mother was a telephone operator. And they could just separate the wheat from the chaff. Because I grew up in a time when a lot of churches were very, very narrow, in my opinion today. We weren't supposed to play cards. We weren't supposed to dance. We weren't supposed to go to the movies. We weren't supposed to go to mixed swimming. I mean, it was a long list. And my folks, fortunately, knew that none of that mattered. So my dad said, now you pay attention to what does matter, that you hear in church. But he said, these things don't matter. So I was able to, I mean, not that I played cards as a kid, but any kind of thing was considered just not right. So I've seen a lot of changes, not all for the good, but I think most of them for the good. The other day I saw a boy walk down the street and he had a mohawk haircut and was tattooed. And I know some people would be offended, but I was glad. It's not my style. If it were my son, I probably wouldn't be glad. But still, he can walk down the street. People don't bother him. They don't even pay him any attention, really, other than just a glance. Or I can remember a time if a racially mixed couple came downtown, it probably would really have been a problem, a big problem. And now I'm so happy to see people admire biracial children, and I've just seen those changes in the last years, and I'm very grateful to have lived long enough to have seen that. I was 72, my birthday, so I've seen a lot of decades come and go.
What do you remember as a younger person that's gone now that you really miss?
Well, I really miss the corner drugstore. I mean, I went every day after school as a student and then as a teacher to get a Coca-Cola. I don't even know that I really like Coca-Colas, but I am addicted. When I was teaching, I had to be real careful because one day, I don't know what we were talking about, it's addiction, and I said, well, I'm addicted to Cokes. The kids were like, woo! I said, not Coke, not cocaine, Coca-Colas. So, and at one time, someone said, well, everybody knew everybody. But I'm not sure that's always the best, because I'm just delighted to meet new people who come into town. And of course, there was a lot of, as a child, I can remember being very terrified of the Ku Klux Klan. My father was asked to join, and he always felt he was a coward because he couldn't give the real reason. He just had to say that his wife and son didn't get to see much of him. But I felt very lucky to have parents who, in that era, were not prejudiced. I read that's one of the greatest blessings they passed on to me, and so that was a negative thing that I don't miss. I miss our elementary school. It was unfortunately torn down. Never should have been, but I guess every town has to lose an important building before we sit up and take notice. And I was so pleased to be preceded today in the interview by Jerry Schicone, who has really been a godfather in the best sense of the word to Winter Garden, because his generosity has known no end, and he's a very modest man about it. He just made so many things possible. He bought the depot and turned it into a heritage museum, and very kindly asked me if I would be the founding director. And I really didn't have the qualifications, but he said, well, he knew I loved the town, and I loved the people, and I knew so many people from having taught school, and I loved every minute I was there. It was great. And my mother, who had had a stroke 25 years, well, for 25 years she was not able really to speak. She could say a little. She never missed anything. She was very, very smart, but she just couldn't verbalize. And she helped us, and she clipped, I think we figured, over 10,000 newspapers, and started family files, because one of my goals for the museum was that every family, regardless of their social background, racial background, be included with a family file. Because once you do that, it's their museum. There's something personal. So I don't remember how many there were when I left, but I was told recently there are over 9,000.